Hi guys, welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. Tonight's session is Imaging Rigs of Nightfall Part 2. Continuation of a session we did a few weeks back that was really popular and you got to see a lot of gear all at one time. So it's going to be a good one tonight. But before we get into that, first things first, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can always check us out on our website, and then you have the chat module that we all like to, I don't know, bicker back and forth over all sorts of stuff, but at least it gives you the opportunity to ask questions, and we'll call them right out to the people who have the gear, and it's a great way to learn about different stuff. As well, this week's image of the week goes to, there we go, Yuri Abraham, and it is the Carina Nebula, the Great Carina Nebula. It's a narrowband in the Hubble palette, and looks like he shot it from Australia, Melbourne's light polluted suburbs. Details I have here, taken over the course of 10 days, 22H alpha frames, 900 seconds, 1503 frame, 15 900 second 03 frames, 22 900 second S2 frames, total integration of 14.8 hours, and it's really a nice image. So Yuri, congrats on the image of the week. Great image, and keep submitting them. And for all you guys out there, you can submit your images for image of the week on our website now. So just go drop down the image of the week. You'll see image of the week submission, and you basically just upload your photo and it goes right in. So without any further ado, I am going to hand this right over to our presenter tonight, who is Alex, and he is going to take it over. Alex, you there? I know you're there. There you go.
Muted myself there. Welcome back to the second part of the Nightfall Astro Imaging show. We are going to go through some things. If you want to see what Nightfall is about, I'd suggest you go back to the first show. I think it was January 12th, and we ran through 3 rigs already, and we showed you a little bit about Nightfall. We're not going to take some time with that. We did get some feedback. One is that I should re-record all those things with better microphone systems and stuff like that. And so I have gone and actually spent some money and got some new microphones that we can use next time we do this. The next time we do this is, if I'm not mistaken, at the Winter Star Party next week and a half from now. Josh and I are going to be at the Winter Star Party, so we're going to try to catch some rigs on the beach there and get them all to you at some time in the near future. So we're going to do that again, and we'll have a better microphone system. Another thing that people suggested was that we show some pictures that were taken with those rigs. And so the guys tonight, I hope, have some pictures they can show. And here's one from Phil Klein, who presented his, I think it was on an AP 900 with a QSI 583 last week. And here's his Flaming Star Nebula. He also sent along a M1 for us to see, the crab. And as you can see, the pictures are a little bit reduced in size, and I've blown them up here so you can see them a little bit better. But they're real nice pictures with good sharp tracking and stuff like that. So thanks, Philip. Philip couldn't be with us tonight, but he did want to show off his work from before. Okay, the next thing we wanted to see was some film. And Steve Lindsay's going to be up first. And Steve, I'm going to get your movie on here and get you started. Steve, right? How we doing? Hi, Steve. Welcome to the Astro Imaging channel. I want to ask you a couple of things about. You realize that this might well be, if we get this technically correct, on YouTube someday.
Yes.
And you give permission to be on YouTube, okay?
Yes, I do.
No, okay. So, tell us, please. Welcome to Nightfall, and tell us about your rig.
Oh, okay. So my rig, from the top down, I have, you won't recognize this. This is a Celestron HD11, which I recently swapped out the aluminum tube with a carbon fiber tube Public Missiles on the internet. You can look up, and they sell carbon fiber tubes. I hadn't seen any HD11s with that yet, and wasn't sure whether you could do that with C11, and he wasn't sure either. So at Public Missiles, but they did confirm that the whole pattern is essentially the same as C11s. So it's other than that, it's identical to a Celestron HD11. I image with a QHY10 one-shot color camera. I have the 0.7 reducer, Celestron reducer on the mount, and I use an off-axis guider with the QHY 5L2, which is a fairly recent, good sensitive guide camera that I really like. And I put all this on an AP 900 mount. This was really the big investment over the last 3 years, and I just love this mount. If anything is ever going wrong relative to the mount, it's always me and never the mount, which is great. I set that on a rotating plate, which is really nice. So when you first set up and you want to know whether you're pointed north or not, you pretty much don't worry about it till it gets dark. You just level the mount.
Who makes the plate?
Who makes that plate? I bought that 3 years ago. I'm trying to remember. This is not the AP plate. I'd have to look that up. Sorry, I can't think of that off the top of my head. But it's great because then it just gets dark, and then all of a sudden Polaris pops out, and you unscrew these three knobs around the mount, and you just literally buttery smooth, just rotate the whole setup.
Give you so much more power than the original.
Point
up there.
The original adjustments for changing your azimuth to try to get more centered to Polaris has very limited range, and even Astrophysics sells a rotating plate that has more range, but it's still quite limited, whereas this one's 360 degrees. You could be pointed due south and be pointed due north in about 3 seconds just by unscrewing these knobs and rotating the whole thing around.
Steve, if you set up your tripod where you were pointing due south,
yeah, that would be a bad thing. You probably are going to be struggling with other items. Yeah, that's very true. Okay, so then let's see.
What's that collection of wires coming out just at the top of that tripod?
Yeah, I've got a powered USB 2 hub here, and coming out of that is one cable goes to the mount. This is USB to serial adapter for the mount. One is for the imaging camera, and one is for the guide camera. This is a folding Lost Manny tripod with a custom table that cut out
Greg had.
Just like Greg had, drilled holes for eyepieces and things like that. And you can set power supplies and accessories. It's real convenient. And one interesting thing about this tripod, it's got the standard Lost Manny legs, but I had a friend that was good at modifying things and welding, and he put some levelers on the feet of each leg, which makes it real convenient for leveling when you first set up, which has been nice. And then I just have some vibration pads under some wood plates to set it on. So if your ground is a little soft, then it's not an issue. So yeah, I've really enjoyed this mount and setup.
How long have you been using it?
Well, I've been using the mount itself for about 2.5 years now, and just the HD11 early 2015 really, and then just had about 4 months on the carbon fiber tube. Before I had that, I have a TEC 140 refractor, which I love and is a beautiful instrument. But I just got tired of wanting to image some narrower field objects instead of seeing a big field of view with a little tiny galaxy in the middle. This has a 2,000 millimeter focal length, so you can get galaxies and planetary nebula that weren't very fun to image in a wide field scope, and zoom in on interesting areas of other kinds of nebula and clusters and things like that.
you've given us a pretty good description of this. Is there something you've done that you're particularly proud of? Any customization that has made it really a lot different than the stock might have been?
Most everything on here is stock other than the accessory table and the leveling feet on the bottom. I've just looked up a lot of different accessories that I've added on, but just about everything you can get commercially. Up until this last spring, you could not get the carbon fiber tube on an HD11. So I had the manufacturer of the ones for the C11s investigate the hole pattern, and he confirmed. So I think I was one of the first carbon fiber tubes.
Tell me, why do you care? Why do you care whether it's carbon fiber or common ordinary pedestrian?
Right. Well, that's the change of the expansion and contraction of the aluminum with the temperature coefficient is quite a bit larger than you get in carbon fiber. Carbon fiber is known to be, I think it's about a fifth coefficient of expansion.
So what's that give you?
So that holds your focus a lot more stable, especially in the cold winter nights when temperature really drops significantly. In the summertime, I really haven't noticed much difference, but in the winter nights will be the good test in a few months from now.
Okay. What kind of software do you use? How do you acquire your images?
I do all my image capture and pre-processing in Nebulosity. I guide off of PhD2, which is nice because Craig Stark interfaces it with Nebulosity, so you can dither and do things like that. And then I do my post-processing in Photoshop CS5.
Okay, do you have a convenient way? Remember, this is going on the YouTube, so don't give away anything, as far as contact information. If you're on cloudy nights and want to give us your contact information, your name on cloud, or I hope to have you on the show when we actually do this on the imaging channel. But what's your name? Where are you from?
Name's Steve Lindsay. I'm from Torrance, California. And with Greg, we're part of the South Bay Astronomical Society there in the Los Angeles area. And I do have a website for my images, and I believe it has a email address you can get a hold of me on, and that's nightglories.com.
Night Glories. Well, say that.
Yeah, nightglories.com.
Okay, thank you. You come to, is this your first Nightfall, or you've been here before?
Oh, no, this is probably my 10th Nightfall or so.
Okay, so you know about Nightfall.
Yeah.
You're going to come back again next year. What are we going to see different? Anything?
Oh,
do anything different on that rig?
I eventually will switch from a one-shot color camera to a monochrome with filter wheels. I've just stayed away from that and concentrated on getting better mounts and optical tubes and things like that, and not having as much time to do processing and things like that. So that'd probably be the next upgrade.
Cool. Let me ask you. People come up to you all the time and say, so like, what should I do for astro imaging? What do I need? What do I need? What do I need? What do they need? I would agree with Greg's comment. I would definitely start with the best mount that a mount that's at least one level better than you think you need, or that especially is advertised in the magazines, because they tend to underperform for imaging needs. So that would be my first recommendation. And then don't hesitate to start simple when you're first getting into it. I started with doing wide field on tripods with star trails and piggyback and all that kind of stuff long before I started doing prime focus. Okay, Steve, thanks so much. I don't know when this will be on or how. It depends on Adam, and we'll see what we can do, but we hope to have you on when there's time. Okay, okay, thanks, Alex. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye. All right, bye. Okay, I believe we've got some questions coming in. David, I see you're handling one there.
So Will's asking, he's curious about how you're dealing with all your organizing your gear for transport and everything, how you deal with condensing it and getting it around.
Oh, just how I pack it up and get it transported.
Yeah.
One thing which is nice is when I bought that AP 900 used, and one of the real selling features of it is there were two really nice custom shipping containers for the two pieces that it breaks down into that nicely fit. So that helps a lot with the mount. All the accessories and everything fit in the boxes, and then for the big heavy folding tripod, I actually bought like a soft Dobsonian case, kind of like from Orion type thing that fits in. I just zip it up and then I can just slide it into the back of my small SUV, and then same kind of thing for the telescope. I just pack that up in there's a soft case. I think I got it from Pacific Design. Is that the name of the company? Something like that. That's not that expensive for storing that, and the rest of it's just in some plastic storage boxes. This kind of stuff everybody does.
Okay, are there other questions out there? Steve, did you have anything you wanted to show us on screen share?
I have a few images that I've taken with this setup with the HD11 that I could show if you want me to screen share.
I'm going to go over to the screen share and show them.
Yeah, let me see. Okay, so I just hit screen share, and how do I make it?
Screen.
Oh, I see. There, share. And now is my screen up now?
Yep.
Okay, so let me pull up this. This was Trifid Nebula. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, that was a Trifid Nebula. I was pretty happy with this compared to other images. It's obviously in the longer focal length, a lot more zoomed in, so I have a lot more resolution than I was used to. The stars were nice and tight. The tracking's really good. And overall, I was very happy with this. A little deeper exposure and a nice colorful stars. This was a zoomed in version of Andromeda, obviously, and just starting to see a lot more fine detail in the dust lanes and things like that than I'm used to with a wider field. This was obviously the Whirlpool M51, which was pretty good. And then let's see, this was not as good. I didn't have a very long exposure on this, and I stretched it too far, an M101. This was M104, obviously the Sombrero, which turned out pretty nice. It's a lot larger than I'm used to in my TEC. And I think that's probably 106. And again, just happy with the tighter stars and the finer resolution on the dust lanes and things like that.
How much you see from your carbon fiber from before when you had the aluminum?
Most of these were probably before I switched to carbon fiber. They were done in the summertime, and had pretty good luck with focus staying stable. And so the stars, the typical exposure times are between 2 and 4 hours, cumulative exposure. And I usually do 10-minute subs over 2 to 4 hours. Just kind of depends on the setup and the weather and where I first start imaging, how much run I have on the mount, how long the exposures go for.
Okay. Steve, thank you very much for being there and for showing off your stuff. I think that was all the questions we had for you. Stick around if you like.
Sure.
Go to Bob Massey next. And let's see, we should be back on my screen share, which is on you, I think. So let's see, where should I go next? I'm going to start a movie. Bob, you out there? Bob, say hi. Bob Massey. Okay. You're seeing Bob. Let's see. Let me get the sound back and start her up. Go, play, 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 mister. What's wrong with that? Ah, this screen share is confusing me. Sorry, guys. Okay, we on?
Alex, we're on, but you're not sharing your screen anymore.
Hi, Bob. Welcome to Nightfall. Welcome to the Astro Imaging channel. As you know, I'm taking some videos of people in their astro imaging rigs, and I was particularly interested in getting to see yours because yours is not typical of the other ones we're seeing here. You did like I did. You did something besides what you've got at home. So, and I did too. So I want to talk to you about what you got and to tell people about it and tell some of the features of it and things like that. Now, you realize this is for the Astro Imaging channel, which means it will be going on YouTube. Do we have permission to put you on YouTube eventually, yes, assuming I work this out technically? Yep. There you go. Tell us who you are, some contact information. I think somebody wanted to get a hold of you, but it's something simple like you can find me. I'm Bob on riverastro.org.
Okay.
Okay. So tell us about your setup for today.
Okay. Well, I'm Bob Massey, and I am with the Riverside Astronomical Society. And if you wish to contact me, you can go on the riverastro.org site, and you'll find my name there and list of the staff. My rig tonight is fairly basic, and it's kind of my whole idea was not to bring 10,000 things down here and try to travel light and set up quickly. So I do have a main setup back in my observatory up at our GMARS site. But all I brought today was a Explore Scientific APO, 80 millimeter. It is the carbon fiber, and the reason I went with that is because got that mounted on top of a Star Adventure, which has a max payload of about 11.5 pounds. And this whole rig, I actually weighed it before I left home, is about 7.5 pounds, or just a little under 7.5 pounds. Difference from the basic Explore Scientific is I do have a Feather Touch focuser on the back, and then this is a modified DSLR, Canon T3i. And all of that is sitting on top of an ancient Meade ETX mount. I brought the same mount out last year with just a Canon camera, and I found that the tripod I had on it was iffy at best. So this is a considerably sturdier mount, and all that feeds into my computer, and that's the way I go.
What kind of software are you using to run your imaging session tonight?
Tonight I'm pretty much strictly BYEOS.
Okay, backyard EOS, because you're using the
Canon, right.
Tell us about that finder scope at the top.
Oh, the finder.
You're wearing a black shirt, so step aside so we can actually.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay.
Anyway.
Finder scope is a typical red dot scope, except it's got a modification on it. Nothing that I did, but it's available from Scope Stuff. The whole thing is like $35 or something like that, and it really makes a difference. Obviously, I don't have go-to or anything like that on this. I'm just star hopping and finding whatever I wanted, doing it the hard way.
So your red dot finder slips into the
hot foot shoe.
Hot shoe.
Hot shoe, yeah.
Okay. Now you're running unguided.
I am running unguided, correct.
Unguided. And how do you polar align?
The Star Adventure, it's the standard way of doing it. They have a polar scope through the center of it, and then there's an app with a ring around in the reticle, and then on your phone you have an app that will tell you where Polaris should be, and you just line it up. Generally, it's been pretty good for me. The other night I had some problems, but I think they were more a matter of operator error. I had some loose things up here. Yeah. Failure to resolve that, I'll go to drift a line if I can't get the polar line to go 100%.
Could I ask what the approximate budget was for all this?
Well, I didn't necessarily have a budget per se. I just started putting it all together. But I estimate, minus the mount, the tripod, I'm guessing probably around 1,500.
And with that, what kind of pictures do you take?
It's not narrow field and it's not wide field. It's kind of something in between. So something like Andromeda, the Pleiades will pretty much fill the frame.
Okay, cool. What do you hope to get tonight if it clears up?
I'm hoping to just do some basic stuff. I'm probably going to do the Pleiades, Andromeda, and then if we're fortunate enough for the rest of the night, I'll kind of swing over to Orion and get some stuff over in that area there.
I'm sorry, did you tell us what the focal length was?
No, I did not. Would you like that information? Yes, it's
Difficult, Robert.
I think it's 6.7.
6.7
Yeah.
F ratio.
Yeah.
80, so it's okay. Have you done anything with this setup that's original, or is it pretty much stock as they suggested you put it together?
The only thing that I really did, and I had to go to Precise Parts for this, for the adapter and everything, is the feather touch focuser. That was not stock. This comes with a standard friction type focuser, and that obviously isn't good enough.
Somebody's stealing a car, apparently.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. So
There's a lot of stolen cars. Okay, you used it 2 nights ago. You were using it out here. I was sitting over there and hearing you cuss now and then.
yes.
You're coming back to Nightfall again next year. You're coming back with this rig, I assume.
I think so. Yeah.
What would be different? What would you do different if you could do anything?
Wow. I'm not sure I would do that much. I was a little impressed with that Pole Master thing, but I think that's $300 I really don't need to spend.
Yeah. Can you run this and get a good? How long of exposure can you pick up?
Well, of course, obviously it depends on the focal length, but I was doing with camera lenses last year. I was getting about 3 or 4 minute exposures without any problems.
Longer than your camera lens was.
Yeah, this is much longer, so I'm probably going to be lucky if I can get a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Might even have to stick with a minute, but we'll see.
Anything else you'd like to tell us about this before I go into my final question?
No. If anybody wants to find out what my results were, they, like I say, look me up on rivastro.org.
Okay, and tell me and by the way, we hope to have all of the participants here on the program, assuming I actually got good videos here. It's getting dark, but the video still looks good here. I imagine the audio's coming in okay. What advice would you have for somebody who wanted to do this kind of wide field imaging?
I think my advice for anybody is to talk to somebody else first and come to events like this, whether it's your local club or this is obviously a very special event, but ask around before you just jump in. There's a lot of information on the internet and so forth, and that'll help you once you get into it. But I don't think there's any substitute for talking to somebody who already has equipment in that area. And I think the biggest advice, and I hear everybody say it, and maybe others already said it in your other interviews, is that bigger isn't necessarily better when you first start out. I made that mistake. I bought a 10-inch LX50 about 15 years ago. I wasn't just starting out, but I was getting back into the hobby. And it sat there for years, and I used a couple, maybe 4 or 5 times, and I ended up selling it. I wasn't ready to get back into it. So my biggest advice is to talk to someone.
Okay. Thanks very much, Bob.
Sure.
Bob, are you out there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Bob, you've got a couple of questions. I'll let one of the other guys handle them.
Yeah, Bob. Actually, one of them was answered just as it was asked in regards to typical length for subs on a setup like this. But then he's asking, how far would you push the exposures?
Well, it certainly depends on the polar alignment, obviously, for one thing. I was shooting at 800 and 1600, you can go a little shorter. one of the nights wasn't all that great. It was, you could see, but you knew the quality images weren't going to be that great. So I spent time going all the way up to 5 minutes, and that 5 minutes was just not good at all. And that's more the mount itself than anything else. But I would say this configuration, probably 2 minutes is about as good. On a really good night, you might get a little more than that. I did bite the bullet and buy a Polemaster. I haven't put it on there yet, but my thought was I could use that to get a much better polar alignment, and that might help me tracking wise as well. But at any rate, I think you'd be stretching with this configuration with 3 minutes. Regular camera lenses and so forth, you can easily go to 3 minutes.
Awesome. And Jeremy's asking, or he's mentioning that he's looked at the Astro Adventure mount before, and he thinks yours looks different. Does it have a motor on the deck axis, or do you have any modifications on there?
No, there are a couple of different ways of mounting. You can see kind of an L bracket there. I do have an OPT dovetail plate there right underneath the scope. You can see OPT on there. They're not the only ones that make that, but I put that on there. I originally put the scope on before I came out here. It was a real jury rig thing, and it wasn't stable at all. And I put it on this little adapter, and it really made everything nice and tight. That's about the only thing I think that's different, that didn't come either with the Star Adventure or was an option with it.
Okay. How do you like it? Okay. I'm sorry. That was for a different Polemaster. Someone's tempted to get Polemaster. Someone else bought it. You haven't used Polemaster yet, have you?
I haven't. The gentleman that set up right behind me, Frank Boker, who's also in our club, and I think he might be one of the people. I don't know if Alex has him as well, but he had bought one, and he was raving about it all night behind me, and it drove me crazy. So I ended up purchasing one, but you needed a little adapter that goes on there, and they didn't have that, so I had to order that. And I'm going to try it. I think it'll make things simpler. I really didn't have for those that know about the Star Adventure, it's not that hard to align. It's just kind of awkward, and you got to get down pretty low unless you have a very high mount. But the Polemaster ought to make it just about perfect. So as good an alignment as you probably can, short of maybe drift aligning or something.
Yeah, we did a show on Polemaster, and it really seems impressive. It's funny how polar aligning and drift aligning has gone from an hour-long process in some cases to a 3-minute process these days.
Exactly.
Very tempting. Excuse me. Is your DSLR modified?
It is. It's a Hap Griffin mod.
Got it. Okay. I think we're caught up on questions.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Bob. And we'll be heading off to Greg Beneke next. If I can figure out how to do this, Greg's at 2740. Hi, Greg. You out there?
You know that you're going to be on YouTube, and we've got your permission to put you up there.
Yes, I know I'm going to be on YouTube, and you have my permission.
Okay, well, welcome to the Astro Imaging channel. We're here at Nightfall, and we just wanted to see what people are using for their Astro Imaging wigs and what they thought about them, and give some advice to all the people that watch us on Sunday nights. So, thanks for being here, and please describe your rig for us. Okay.
Okay. Well, I got this Astrophysics 1100 mount in December. It's an upgrade from a Lost Monty G11 that I'd been using for the last 12 years or so. So this is a fantastic mount. Performs much better than G11. Then my wife was willing to let me buy a scope to go on top of it. So I got the Celestron Edge HD 1100 after the new year, since I wanted to do longer focal lengths with the better mount. For the camera, I've got a camera that I kind of came across serendipitously. I went to a swap meet, electronic swap meet. A guy was selling this camera for $200, didn't know what he had, didn't know if it worked. I took a gamble on it, got it home, and it worked. So that's why I've got this camera. It's a color 8300 chip based camera. I use a Orion thin off axis guider with a Meade DSI Pro.
Greg, you know, Nightfall's got a lot of family around and stuff like that. And as soon as this family kind of moves on, we'll get back to our recording. Here.
Okay. I can back up a ways if you like.
No, you don't need to back up. We're fine. I mean, we're being friendly. Okay, keep going.
Okay, so I'm using a Meade DSI Pro for the guider. I've actually got a QHY, what is the model number, Steve? The QHY 5L that I've bought, but I haven't installed the drivers for. Anyway, I highly recommend anybody should move to an off-axis guider as soon as they can in their imaging, because that's going to solve a lot of problems for them. Let's see what else. So I mounted it on a G11 tripod here. That's a very common thing that people with the smaller astrophysics mounts do. The G11 tripod's a beefy tripod, and it can handle it with no problem. One thing I don't like about the Edge, the finder that comes with it, the finder mount is really flimsy, so I've got a better finder mount on here. What else? So I can show you a little trick I've got here. Let me rotate this around here. Oh, I don't have power. Let's loosen up the clutches then. I wanted to do something so that I could do flats in the daytime and not be limited to just twilight, and I didn't feel like spending the money for a electroluminescent flat panel. So I just took a piece of foam core, white foam core, a couple of pieces of black foam core, cut a hole in it. It stays up there and makes a nice flat light.
And what kind of lighting conditions can you use that in?
Really any.
So you can point it up towards the sky.
You can point it, I point it towards the blue sky, and I get a better color balance between my 3 color channels. But I pointed at the sun. Of course, you get a shorter exposure if you point it at the sun. If you need a longer exposure, point it away from the sun.
Well,
but
when you say pointed at the sun, you mean pointed?
I mean literally at the sun.
Okay.
And this attenuates things enough and diffuses it enough, and it's a nice flat field.
Well, that certainly simplifies the old t-shirt.
And it costs you about $10 to make, and it works beautifully.
It's a translucent plastic, or what is it?
It's foam core, white foam core.
Okay.
And it provides diffusion and attenuation and everything you need.
What kind of software do you run this sucker on?
For capture, I'm using Nebulosity 4. I've just recently purchased PixInsight, and I'm going through the learning curve on that. I've got one good processing job out of it, so I think I know the basics now. I highly recommend it. PixInsight is a very powerful piece of software, and I think it's going to improve my results tremendously.
What types of targets is this thing particularly good for?
Well, I'm imaging at f7, so the focal length's about 2,000 millimeters. So it's good for some of the smaller galaxies. I had been imaging at 800 millimeters before, and I had pretty well exhausted a lot of the bigger objects that were appropriate for it. And so this is allowing me to pull in details. Like last night I was trying to get the Merope Nebula instead of the entire Pleiades, even though that didn't work out too good. But
Did you get through the clouds and things? We had some cloud problems.
Yeah, I had cloud problems and computer problems, but
what are some things that you've done to this that isn't exactly stock?
boy,
Or is it stock?
this is basically stock, and then actually Steve will have something on that when you get to his.
Okay.
Boy, have I really done anything? What's that? Okay, yeah. So I made this little table down here. This is when I first got the Lost Monty G11. I bought the round at Home Depot, cut little curved notches in it so that it fit against the tripod, Velcro pieces screwed into the bottom to hold it in place, drilled some holes for eyepieces, and
So you've got everything there that you need when you need it.
right. And at one time I even had a red light mounted up in here so it would light my tray.
Glad you didn't, because anybody who needs a red light to find their stuff should find another option.
Yeah, well, that was early on. I don't do that anymore.
Okay, tell me about that device I'm pointing at right now. DSLR, bulb, focus.
Okay, this is a USB hub. In fact, I just changed it as a result of Richard Wright's talk today. This is a better USB hub than I had been using, and I've been having some USB issues. So maybe this one will be a little bit better. But basically, I've got a...
Well, wait a minute. What are you talking about, Richard Wright's talk today? What did you learn from Richard Wright today?
Well, he was talking about different USB hubs. The cheaper ones have ceramic oscillators that don't maintain their frequency over a wide temperature range, whereas the more expensive ones, the ones he called USB certified, have crystal oscillators, and they maintain their frequency over a much broader temperature range.
And that little bit of difference means a whole lot.
It can make a lot because
Which is, what did he say, 8 to 25 bucks?
Right.
Don't buy the $8 version. That's for your printer.
Right. Don't buy the $8 version. And that's what I had in here was the $8 version.
How long you been using this rig?
I got the mount back in December, got the scope in January, so it's relatively recent.
Okay, it's October now for those of you who may be watching this on YouTube in the year 2073. What would you do different now that you've done it? You put it together. Is there anything that you need to do different? I mean, I know you've been evolving it. What would you do different now?
Well, the one thing I do want to change is the camera. I want to go to monochrome imaging. The one-shot color is nice, but I think I can do a lot better with the monochrome and tricolor imaging. And I also want to be able to do narrowband imaging with it.
Narrowband is really cool. You can do it from your home.
Right.
Very easily.
Right. I have
do you have anything else you want to tell us about it? Something special about your rig or something you've learned about it or something like that? Because I'm going to ask my last question, which is your advice for people just starting out.
Okay, well, the one thing you want to try to manage your cables. Like I was able to find little short pigtails for my AC wires here, so I don't have to have coiled wires all over the place. You can get that. They're only about 18 inches long, maybe 2 feet long, and it allows me to route the cables without a lot of excess wiring down here. You can end up with a lot of clutter of wiring if you don't manage your cables.
And I see your cables go through the mount, unlike mine.
Right. The AP1100 is nice because it has this in-mount cable routing. There's ports here. You send the what is that? That's the declination cable, your imaging cables, and they come out, go up through here, come out the port here, and so it's really neat. You don't have to worry about snagging any cables.
Okay, any last minute advice for the newbies?
Well, I think one of the best pieces of advice that you'll hear is get the best mount that you can afford if you're getting into astro imaging. The mount really makes a huge difference. It allows you to image at longer focal lengths, image for longer periods of time, longer sub-exposures, and it'll make a big difference in your imaging altogether.
Thanks so much, Greg. Do we have your contact information if somebody wanted to get a hold of you? Are you on Cloudy Nights?
Yes, but what is my username?
You're not often on Cloudy Nights. Or is it like me? I can't remember my phone number.
I just can't remember my phone number. I'm on Cloudy Nights frequently.
Okay. Well, you'll be on the program when we actually do this, and you can maybe refresh your memory.
I'd be happy to be on the program and give you that information.
Thank you very much. We're going to go on to one of your partners. Which club are you with?
We're with the South Bay Astronomical Society in Los Angeles County.
And welcome to Nightfall. I'm glad you're here.
All right. Thank you, Alex.
Why don't you guys start with the questions?
The first question is, what brand is the USB hub? Oh, I'm not hearing you, Greg. And you aren't muted. I don't know if it's a microphone issue. I can see you. So, do you see on the screen, do you see the gear icon in the top middle? It says settings. Click that, and then you should see microphone. Make sure that an active microphone is selected in there. That may still not hearing you. I thought we tested your audio too.
Yeah. Actually, he said hi just before the video started.
Yeah. No, still not hearing you. And you're not muted. Don't know why. Is that talk again one more time? No.
Okay. We're not getting you there, Greg. We can come back to him.
Okay.
One other guy out there.
Yeah.
Oh, was that him?
No.
Okay. Sorry about that. We'll figure it out. Richard Wright. Richard Wright comes to us. He was the presenter at Nightfall this year. Richard, you're out there?
Yes, I'm here.
Richard was down towards the end of the day, so
Dark.
it'd be very loud. Hang on for a second. Let me get it.
On the Astro Imaging channel, we're here with Mr. Wright. Richard, you know what the Astro Imaging channel is? You've been on the Astro Imaging channel. One thing I do want to get a hard copy of is this is probably going to go to YouTube if technically it's done correctly, and I hope it is because I've done like 6 of them already tonight. Do we have your permission to put you on YouTube?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Richard, tell us who you are, maybe how we can get a hold of you if we want to ask questions about what you're doing here.
Okay.
And then tell us about your rig.
So I am Richard Wright. I'm a senior engineer for Software Bisq. Obviously I'm going to be using Software Bisq things. You can get a hold of me at richard@bisq.com. I'm also on Twitter at the Accidental Astro, if you want to contact me that way. And I have a Paramount Mighty, and I brought what I call my wide field dream machine. It's just a 200 millimeter camera lens. I flew all this in from Florida, so I didn't want to bring a lot of heavy stuff, and I didn't want to bring that's pretty much it. I flew in from Florida. It's a long way. So I have a 200 millimeter camera lens. I have a QSI 683 with a full complement of filters. I have some 3 nanometer Astrodon narrowbands. So my plan is to shoot the California Nebula here, get some HA on it, and also some RGB if the skies are good for that. I have a kind of a cool little focusing system. Starlight Instruments makes this bracket so that you can put a CCD camera on a camera lens, and you can put a stepper motor on here with a little belt system, and then at focus or focus max or whatever you like to use can actually turn the focuser and can do autofocus for you, which is really kind of cool. I have an in-step focuser controller. I wrote the plugin for most all of this stuff, so it's not really custom, but I did the programming myself. And the whole thing is run by this little box on the back. This is a Raspberry Pi, and the Sky is available for the Raspberry Pi very, very soon, probably by the time this video gets on YouTube. So that's the only software that I'm using is the SkyX on the Raspberry Pi. It generates a little Wi-Fi spot, and I can connect to it with my laptop or with my iPad and control it all, and then I can disconnect. So that's the nice thing, is I designed this system to be ultra portable and to run on battery. Of course, I don't need to run on battery since I'm here, but laptops actually generate, out of all of this equipment, the laptop is the thirstiest when it comes to power drain. So this little guy runs off the VersaPlate, and it's low power. It doesn't draw but about half an amp of current the whole time it runs, and it's multi-processor, so you get all the benefits.
So when I ask you where your computer is, you're pointing to it right
That's
there.
it right there. So there's no wires dangling down. Everything is all nice and
Well, Mr. Wright, where's your monitor then?
I'll
Read what your computer's doing.
I'll use my iPad and connect to it, and I can use my iPad to control it, or I can use a laptop. Sometimes I'd rather use a laptop. It's a little bit bigger and easier to use, but and I use remote desktop. So I use VNC server on here, and then a VNC client on the laptop or on the tablet. And you can use an iOS tablet or an Android tablet.
What do you use for power when you don't have AC?
I have two power sources. The mount runs off a Ego battery. You can get them at Home Depot. They're lithium-ion batteries. They're used to power electric lawn equipment. So you get like an electric leaf blower, and we make a little adapter that'll run the mount off of it. It's 56 volts. The mount's 48 volts, but our control system can handle 56 volt input, and it converts it. And most everything is running off of the mount supply, except for the CCD camera. And I made my own little lithium iron phosphate, which is a very lightweight lithium ion type battery, little power box. Those things are kind of hard to fly. They tend to freak out when you try to ship batteries. So if you're going to do that, you got to ship them well ahead of time to your hotel or wherever you're going. And it's just kind of nice if they had AC here. So
now, this isn't your only rig. You've got another one at home, right?
I have several because I do a lot of the hardware support is software BIS. So I've got all three of the German Equatorial Paramounts, and I have at least one, if not more, cameras from all the different camera vendors. The reason I brought this particular camera in and stuff, I knew where I was coming, and I wanted something lightweight that didn't draw a lot of power. And this lens works really well with this camera for wide field, so I knew it would be a good combination for this Star Party.
But that's
It's a QSI 683.
Okay.
It's an 8300 chip.
I did not know that you could mount. That's a Canon lens?
Yes, a Canon 200 millimeter prime focus. It's an L2. I have it opened all the way up to 2.8, but I actually have a little mask that can stick in there to bring it down, and you don't get the little diffraction spikes from the blades.
Too much back focus needed to get a Canon lens on the top of that.
No. Canons work great on this. In fact, QSI even makes they even sell a little adapter.
Okay, well, I'm
So,
going to look into that.
Yeah, it works great.
This is a relatively mature system. You've used it before, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so
yes.
I was going to say, what would you do different? You've already done it different.
Right.
What iterations, what lessons have you learned in building it?
Power is everything, especially when you're traveling. I like to travel and image, and it doesn't seem very heavy in the living room. And when you get halfway through the airport, you're thinking, my God, what have I done? So really, there's no such thing as a too light a weight sort of thing. Yeah.
All right. We've talked a lot about this. Is there anything else you want to say in general? Because I'm going to ask you one last question here. That last question is, what would you tell people listening on the Astro Imaging channel? You know who our audience is. What would you tell them about taking up Astro Imaging equipment, whatever?
It's fun. It's a passion, not a hobby. You cannot buy your way to the top. Start with a short focal length. They're very, very forgiving. Really, it's more important to get results you're happy with right away than to try to compete with people with great big complicated systems. You do not buy a 16-year-old a Ferrari that can go 200 miles an hour on the road. Start with a very simple system.
Like the Mighty.
Well, the Mighty, absolutely. The Mighty is a nice small system, but I also, if you don't, camera lenses are also a great place to start. If you go with a scope, I would say a refractor is probably the best beginner scope, and short focal lengths. 500 millimeters to get started, and there you go.
As the audience can see, we're starting to lose our light here. So
Yes.
Thanks a lot for being
All
here
right.
with us tonight, Richard.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, guys, give Richard some questions, would you please?
The first thing that popped up was Tolga's mentioning that the WS cover can use the Canon adapter. The ASG cover cannot, and I think it's a matter of the WS doesn't use an off-axis guider, whereas
I thought of that while I was watching the video as well. If you have an off-axis guider, that moves it out further, and so you can't come to focus. But this one doesn't have an so yeah, thanks for that clarification.
And are you you can do you do full modeling with that? Is modeling even required with a 200 millimeter lens like that?
A very small model. I can get away with just 20 points or so. I think people really overplay the modeling on the mounts. If I can make a commercial here, we have some users who get really excited and they love modeling and they like to brag. Oh, I did 300 points. I did 400 points. And most sane people, it scares them to death. But at short focal lengths, you just don't need that much of a model. You just a very small model to figure out the the non-orthogonalities, that sort of thing, and then protract starts kicking in, and you should be able to go 5-10 minutes with a moderate 500-600 or 1,000 millimeter scope pretty easily.
Thank you. And John is asking more specifically about how you're removing the diffraction spikes when you're shooting with the lens wide open.
This is a research project I'm working on the side. I plan to write it up soon. So what I did was I took a Canon cover lens, the cover, and drilled a hole in it. So I made a 50 millimeter hole right in the center of the lens cover. And what that does is it turns the camera lens into basically a refractor. So the f2.8 lens, if I open it all the way up, you get aberrations out near the edge. So you would stop it down to say f4, and it's really nice and sharp at f4. But now the blades internal to the lens give you these really big diffraction spikes. And I remember the first time I ever did it, I was like, "Oh, those are really cool. I like that. It adds some artistic flair." And that didn't last very long. And it was like, I would rather not have that. So it's basically a circular aperture mask you put on the front of the lens. And it makes it, I mean, the images look like you shot it through a 300 millimeter or a 200 millimeter refractor. And if you have a bright object, I think it tames it quite a bit. It helps.
Max is asking for some more info on the focusing setup on the lens. I forget the manufacturer, but tell us a little bit about how it works as well.
Yeah. Starlight Instruments makes it, QSI makes a rebranded version with special brackets to hook onto their camera. But I have it configured for the Winter Star Party next week with a DSLR on it. And what it is a stepper motor is mounted out next to the lens, and then a belt goes around the lens and around the stepper motor. And it's just like you can use a FeatherTouch focuser motor, or I have a RoboFocus stepper motor on there. And so the stepper motor turns the belt, and the belt turns the lens back and forth, just like you were doing if you were focusing manually. And the software doesn't know it's not a telescope. It just knows you push in and it goes out of focus. You pull in and it gets better focus. And so so it just works. It's pretty nice. You can get it from QSI, or you can get it from Starlight Instruments. They make it as well. And yeah.
How's the focus stability on a lens like that? How often would you have to refocus over normal temp change?
A couple of times. And the camera lens is very, very sensitive. It's very hard to focus manually, at least for me. I'm not real super mechanically inclined, but I find that when I'm doing it manually, and I actually had to focus manually at the Star Party, not on the tape. The power cable that I brought had a a short in it, and so that I couldn't get the focuser to work. So I had to take the focuser off and focus manually. And you grab it, you just kind of push on it so that you felt that you put some pressure on it, but you didn't really feel it move. Then you know you've moved it enough. So it's kind of tricky. And yes, as the temperature drops, it'll lose focus. It's not as bad as some refractors. Like a lot of refractors are well known. You know, they're big metal tubes, and the temperature drops 1 degree. The focus can shift quite a bit. It's not quite that bad, but it is. You do have to keep an eye on it as the temperature shifts.
Someone's asking for a suggestion on a USB hub that's USB 3 and 2 compatible. And right below that,
Probably.
someone says StarTech, but go ahead.
Yeah, StarTech, StarTech and Icron. You know, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but I just don't find that I need to spend $100 on a USB hub. You know, I've got a couple of $25 hubs, and they work. US Robotics, I think, is a good brand. I've got a couple of them, and I can't remember the brand. The last time I looked it up, they weren't making them anymore, so I couldn't recommend it anyway. But it's sort of the really cheap hubs you want to avoid. Just get a little bit better hub. Make sure it's USB certified. I don't use anything that requires USB 3 because I guess if you do planetary, you would want that, you know, to get those fast frame rates. Does that help?
I think so.
Okay.
How long of an exposure would you take with the lens setup?
At the Star Party, I did 2 minutes the first night, and I accidentally did 5 minutes the second night. I spent most of my time socializing, and there were a lot of clouds coming through, so I figured with shorter exposures, I would get more exposures that I could keep. I've gone as long as 20 minutes with that, with the narrowband filters, 20 minutes of, you know, HA or whatnot. You don't need to go that long with, you know, with LRGB, or you're going to saturate you have a lot of saturated stars, you know, when you go that long. I find most of the time, you know, the rule of thumb is, you know, once the interesting signal in your object is above the read noise, you're good to go. So, you know, 5 minutes is usually enough. 10 minutes or more is a lot of times you're just showing off, to be honest. Unless you're doing narrowband or you're trying to get some star trails. I mean, there's reasons to do that, but most of the time, a lot of the things we shoot, you can do a 5 minute and you can do a 2 minute exposure. And the difference is the 5 minute exposure is cleaner because there's better signal to noise ratio, but there's not really any extra stuff. And that varies from object to object. There's probably 10 people listening right now and go, oh, that's not true for, you know, NGC, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, okay, it's probably not, but for a lot of the targets that we shoot most of the time, it is true.
All right, and I knew this one was coming. Talk a little bit about SkyX on the Raspberry Pi. Cost, install, where do we get it?
It is, as I predicted on the video, it is currently available. It is just another operating system. So the Sky for Windows, or the Sky for the Mac, or the Sky for Linux, we're on Ubuntu, actually 64-bit Ubuntu, and the Sky for Raspberry Pi are all the same price. Which is the SkyX Pro is $320 something, and then the camera add-on, and you know you can add all the other things. But we do have a pretty good multi-licensing deal. So if you want the multi-license pack, you can, you know, it doesn't cost you $300 per operating system, you know, to get Windows and Mac or Raspberry Pi. All of the operating systems come with the Paramount, and if you have a Paramount and you bought it before we came out with the Linux stuff and your subscription is up to date, then you know you can actually get it for free.
And I'm guessing when you're remote desktoping or tight VNCing in, you basically only need the Raspberry Pi version, and then you're just emulating the desktop onto your iPad or PC or whatever it may be.
Right, right. So you can use, I just set up a friend of mine's observatory, and my observatory down in South Florida is run by a Raspberry Pi. In his observatory, he has an HDMI monitor and a keyboard and a USB mouse. And it was funny, I kind of used him as a guinea pig because he was like, but I want a real computer. And I'm like, it is a real computer. He's like, yeah, but where do you save the files? And it was funny because it's just exactly, it's Linux. It works just, it's not really that different looking than Windows when you set it up. And so if you use a regular monitor and keyboard and so forth, it's not really any different than using any other computer. It's just a very small, low-power computer, and all the data is stored on an SD card instead of on a spinning platter. If you're portable, which was one of my main thrusts, then yeah, you want to set up a Wi-Fi hotspot, or you can use Ethernet, and you can do remote desktop from the laptop or from the iPad. From a laptop's kind of nice because you can get it going, and it's a full, it's just like being on the computer, but then you can close the laptop and you can go wander around and talk to people, and then you can come back. And if you're really truly portable, it allows you to go all night because it's really hard to keep a laptop going all night. There was to plug, the February issue of Sky and Telescope had an article by me on a trip to the Dry Tortugas. So I literally took an imaging system to a desert island where there was no power, and I ran it all off of an iPad. And brand new, not really announced publicly until the Winter Star Party, we actually have a new imaging interface for the sky coming out very, very soon. That's optimized for a 1024 by 768 screen, so you can run it remotely from a tablet or from a desktop as well. And so the whole interface is kind of I don't want to say dumbed down, but it's a lot easier to use because the full remote desktop on a tablet can be a little bit tedious. It's not the best user experience. So we designed something that works better for a small screen, and it's kind of a complete reinvention of the imaging front end, but I'm probably way off topic with that. So,
awesome.
Any other questions?
I'm not sure if Steven's question is for you or is in reference to one of the posts above. Do they make an interface board for turning other stuff on? Steven, are you referring to a USB hub, or are you referring to the Raspberry Pi? I think he might be talking about power over USB or something like that. I'm not quite sure. Oh, another question. How do you power the Raspberry Pi?
The Raspberry Pi, it draws 5 volts. It doesn't draw 5 volts. It runs on 5 volts, and it draws about an amp and a half. And on the VersaPlate of the Paramount, we have a 5-volt port. So Tom Bisk made me a cable, actually, that we cut up a cable and soldered it together. So there's a 5-volt jack on the back of the VersaPlate, and I run the Raspberry Pi off of that. So as soon as I power on the mount, the Raspberry Pi gets power, and it boots up as well. And sometimes I run a USB cable through the mount from the Pi, but the Pi can also control the mount over if you have the Wi-Fi board in the mount. It's kind of convenient, but Wi-Fi, I don't really find that to be super reliable in the field, especially at a really crowded star party. Okay,
Steven clarified. Yeah, it's do they make an interface board on the for the Raspberry Pi for turning other stuff on? So I'm guessing you're probably unique with the VersaPlate.
I think what he wants to do is he wants to have the Raspberry Pi like turn the camera on,
right?
Power the camera on and off. And the Raspberry Pi is quite amazing. It's almost like, to go back to my childhood, a TRS, some old, hobbyist computer married that 151 electronics kit, and they had a baby, and it was the Raspberry Pi. It has a bunch of it's got a full interface set to talk to all kinds of other hardware devices. And so there are hundreds, literally hundreds of projects where you can do robotics with them, and you can connect them and make doorbells and make run cameras with them. And they've got, one of them has a humidity and temperature probe that you can get for them. So the answer is, if you're a hobbyist and a tinkerer, yes. There's nothing really packaged to set up an observatory on a Raspberry Pi and shut things on and off. But if you're, you can certainly do that. There's lots of things you can use. I was browsing before the show. You have a show on the Arduino. I'm going to go back and watch that, because it's a very similar kind of a hobbyist environment with the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, Max is saying he can't run the rest of his software on the Pi. So.
Well, what else does he need to run?
I'm not sure. Now,
so you open the door for a commercial. I mean, the Sky will run your camera. It does guiding. You can't process your PixInsight will run on the Sky. Is the only thing that I use to image with that I can't run on a Raspberry Pi. I can run it on Linux, which is kind of cool. So if you have a regular Linux box, that's kind of neat.
Well, I've completely switched the Raspberry Pi for my portable setup.
Oh, hey, Toga.
Hi, how are you, Richard? I've been
good.
Imaging with Raspberry Pi, using your script for the unguided dither and Ken Sturrock's script for the guided imaging, and it's just just click and go.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Okay,
Good deal. I saw you're giving a talk at NEAF on that too.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm going to be talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. It looks like we've gone through the questions related to related to Richard's presentation. Thanks for being there, Richard. Greg, have you figured out your sound system yet? I see you, but I don't hear you. So, yeah, it looks like you're out of sound. You've either muted yourself, go up to that, or something. I can't tell.
no, he's not muted.
Yeah, we've
Okay,
got.
how about now?
Now we can hear you.
All right, finally.
Okay.
Did
What
we
was
have
that?
questions left over for Greg from back there?
Yes, give me a few seconds to get there.
Also, I had a couple of pictures I could show here.
Yeah, go to your.
Start off with that.
We'll check out the questions meanwhile.
Let's see, share. Okay, can you see the picture of M51 there?
Yep.
Okay, I guess that didn't work right. Okay. And then, I forget what the name of this galaxy is now. Anyway, this is one of the ones that I spent a lot of time on PixInsight processing. And it's a lot better, came out a lot better than when I was doing it in Nebulosity. Then we have the Bubble Nebula here. And then I believe this was the Cocoon, IC 5146. Anyway, I think that was it that I had.
Okay.
So then I'll be happy to answer any questions. How do I get out of the screen share thing? Cancel. Okay.
The first question was what brand was your USB hub?
And I don't have it with me here. It was a hub from Fry's, a fairly cheap hub. Since then, I've actually gone and I went out and spent the money on an industrial grade USB 3.0 hub. That's got specified to operate over a wide temperature range. It's the only USB hub I've ever bought that came with a true certificate of compliance. However, I did have an issue with it out in the desert that it would not recognize the USB to serial device that I was using to communicate with my mount when I was using it with the computer that has Vista on it that I use for capture. Yet when I got it home, it'll be recognized on Windows 10. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyway, so I've got a industrial grade USB hub, and I don't know the brand of that either, but I got that on Amazon. You can look at Amazon. They got a number of industrial grade hubs that they sell there.
Another comment: someone would be glad to offer you $150 for that camera you paid $200 for.
Well, actually, I've since then I've actually upgraded to a QHY10 like Steve Lindsay had there, and I've sold my Nightscape at a little bit of a profit.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, we've got one more video that I think realistic we could present. Is it okay if we go ahead and do that last one?
Yeah.
Okay. It's from me, and I think Tolga will like this. Tolga was saying, God, does everybody spend $40,000 on a rig out at Nightfall? Yeah, we're not quite as bad as the people over at the Winter Star Party, but yeah, there were some people with imaging rigs that weren't quite as expensive, and mine was one of them. Remember when Bob was telling you about how he's got we both have observatories out at Goat Mountain, and we both have, let me see, we're 2710. Just hang on for a second. Yeah, we both have observatories out at Goat Mountain. I've also got one at home, and so frankly, I just don't need, when I go out imaging, I don't want to take a whole lot of equipment with me. So I did like Bob was doing.
Hi, everybody. My name's
am.
Alex McConaughey, and I, too, am at Nightfall down in Borrego Springs, California. I have an observatory out in the desert, and I also have one at home. And both of those are permanent observatories set up all the time. Occasionally, though, I come out to some place like this, and I want to have a portable imaging rig. And so my requirements for a portable imaging rig are to get as much as I can in as compact a situation as I can and still get pretty good pictures. To do that, I have an NP101, and it's mounted with a finder scope from Lumicon that I got from my friend Jose. He said that he owed me some stuff, so he gave me that. An old used Starshoot auto guider, and they're all connected. Let's see, they're riding on a GM8 Gemini 1 system that I've been using for a while. Different parts of the system came together at different times. This is only the second time I'm actually using the whole setup. The last time was last weekend when I took it out to the desert, and while my observatory was running and my Dob was running with an outreach going on, I also had this running just to make sure that I figured out how to work it. I've got a Canon 450, I think it's called a Rebel XSI, modified by Hutech, I think, so that I can get better reds. And I think that describes everything up here. We're on the GM8. My computer is an old notebook computer here. It's running XP, and I'm going to use Backyard EOS and PhD2 to run this particular rig. I got some good pictures with it last week, and everything worked the way it was supposed to work. I'm running on AC today, but it is also possible to run this thing pretty much all night on one of those compact power supplies. It doesn't take up a whole lot of power. That's one of the reasons I opted for the small notebook and, made those kinds of decisions, trying to get it down to smaller size, least impact on the power and things like that. There are no special optics. Oops, I was in the process of balancing this when I took time to take the pictures. I haven't taken time yet to get it completely organized for tonight, but it should work pretty good. I'm going to use it to take wide field pictures. The NP101, although it looks relatively long, it really only is 540 millimeters long. It's a f5.4 Apo scope, and in the back it's got some flatteners and things to make sure that it comes out on the chip, flat
pretty much edge to edge. It's a very good telescope. I've taken a lot of really good pictures of it. It was my backyard observatory telescope for a long, long time. What would I have done differently? Well, I don't know. I've got other mounts and other choices, but for just running around, this is my choice. You can't see it too well over there, but here's a bracket that I can put a RoboFocus on, and for some time I did have a RoboFocus on, and I just haven't put it back on. It doesn't quite fit in the case as well, and now that it's not in the observatory anymore and it goes running out to remote sites, I don't use the autofocus. I use the focusing routines in backyard EOS. I do have a Bratanoff mask I can put up in front. My power supply is, I can run my laptop or my little notebook off a power supply here. It's kind of nice. It's a upverter. I don't know what they're called exactly, a converter, and it takes a DC 12 volt input and will put out any voltage that I choose to put out, 12, 15, 16, 18, 19, 22, up to 24 by switching the switch. Right now I'm using it to run just the mount, but I can use it to run the laptop or the netbook also, and that dramatically increases the length of time I can run the netbook. If I were to do that, I'd have another battery running the mount itself. I think that's about all I've got to say about this. What is it particularly good for? It's good for wide fields, and because this is a modified camera, it's good for taking red stuff, things with hydrogen alpha in it and stuff like that. Approximate budget? Geez, I don't really know. It's all been bought used, and like Jose gave me that, and it's probably in the $5,000 range. If it were new, it would probably be about $6,000. I think that's a $2,000 or $3,000, $2,400 mount. And the scope itself is, I really don't know. I bought it for $1,200. It was bought used. The camera was $800 when I bought it. It probably could be gotten for a lot less by now because it's a 450 and it's pretty old. I can also put my Canon 6D on it or my 600 on it, and both of those are not modified. The 6D has a bigger chip, and I might do that tomorrow night. What have I done that's particularly original? Oh, not much. It's an interesting point here. I've got my wires all wrapped up so that there's very little chance of them fouling. There's a lot of wires here. When I'm portable, I don't take as much care of it as I do on my regular system in my observatory, just because things change around a lot. But I do make sure it's just blue painter's tape, taping it together. But would I like to see different? I'd like it to be smaller. Whenever I've got a portable scope, I'd like it to be smaller. But I figure there's really just two kinds of mounts in the world: lightweight, portable mounts, affordable mounts, and there's those that work. And if you really want a mount to work, it's going to have some bulk to it, and that takes a lot. I've also put my TV85 up here a lot and done a lot of imaging with the TV85, and that's quite successful also, particularly with the sun. Somebody looking into a good astro imaging rig? Figure out what you want, of course. Figure out what your budget is, and then figure out how far you want to go into it. Obviously, as everybody says, go to the mount first. Get a good, strong mount before you go off and do a whole lot of other things. And then go slow. You don't need to buy everything. Remember, all this stuff is used. I think my laptop I bought the day before I went on a long trip and I needed a netbook real quick. But otherwise, I bought all this stuff used. You can do it. Just take your time and go slow. And thank you. Okay. That was, that's the last of them I think we're going to be showing. So anybody got any questions on that?
One question popped up. in regards to what's the guide scope, aperture, and f ratio, and is the image scale similar to the main camera?
I really don't know. I've never checked it out. Never needed to check it out. Oh, you know what I have? I do know what that information. I don't know it offhand, but it's a huge guide scope. But it was the only standalone guide scope short of the SD80 that I've got. You know, one of those Orion short tubes, and this one I thought would be a better guide scope. So I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
And typically you do have some leeway if you're piggyback guiding. You don't have to be imaging anywhere near the same, excuse me, the same focal length as your main scope.
Once upon a time, it mattered a whole lot that you had a guide scope that had a lot more pixels, image scale, not less image scale, I guess, than the main scope. But with auto guiders, they're so much better than the human eye is, and pick things up so much quicker that it not quite as critical anymore. But yeah, I don't happen to remember. I think it's about a 70 millimeter guide scope, so it's a very big guide scope, and it works pretty well. I also, right now, it happens to be attached to my big mount out in the desert, and I'm using my Canon 6D behind a 12-inch RC, and sitting up on top is that guide scope there, and that guider instead of my Lodestar. So I'm using it out in the desert right now for guiding, and it works fine for that too.
Jeff is also asking, is wide field imaging fairly forgiving? After that question on the guide scope.
Well, certainly the guide, yeah, the image scale on that NP101 with the Canon camera, yeah, you've got a lot of image. It's not nearly as critical. Things are not as demanding with that as they are with some of the other telescopes I put up on my mounts. This is my travel rig, so the less focal length you've got, the more you can get away with. And that, after all, is why we always recommend people get those wider field refractors, the shorter focal length refractors when they're learning astroimaging, because the mistakes just don't show up as well. Okay. Thank you very much for watching all that. Those were our imaging rigs from Nightfall. We've got a couple more, but the guys haven't shown up to sign in, so I'm not sure that they're still answering the emails and things like that. So I hope you enjoyed our little trip, and come out to Nightfall with us sometime. It's held every October, late October, early November, that kind of thing, Halloween time. Borrego Springs, nightfallstarparty.com. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. And thanks to all the people who shared their rigs. That was really informative. We got to see a lot of nice rigs and got to hear a lot of good opinions on why people did what they did and the way they did it. I do want to point out, next week we have a topic that we didn't hear much about from Nightfall, do-it-yourself dew heaters. Out in the desert, those guys don't have dew, but where I am, we have dew. So Steve Segarian is going to present on that. That's what we have to look forward to this week. Otherwise, again, thank you, and we will see you all next week.
Bye.